Alright guys, welcome back to my channel Monkey Wrench. I'm Kelly, the monkey with the wrench. Today we're doing another video on this Husqvarna 675 EX1 LC221A, which doesn't mean a whole lot. It just means people read that and say, oh, it's a 6.75 horsepower. That's not true. They don't go by horsepower anymore. They go by cc's, and this is, I think, 163 cc's. You'd have to look it up and do some math conversion. It's a thing that they put on there for people to think they're getting more machine than they are. But if you know the horsepower of this machine, leave it in the comments. Anyway, today's video, and I just finished filming a video on how to change the brake stop cable, or how to fix that, adjust it. Today, he showed up. This guy uses this machine for 30 to 40 hours a week. He cuts grass. So he is not your average homeowner. And back in May, we did a video on this machine because his drive system wasn't working. And what had happened was the belt came off because he busted a pulley. One was completely missing. If I remember correctly, it was this plastic pulley here. It had been run through and it was missing. It had fallen off, broken off, and then I think this one was all gunked up with sand. We have mostly sand down here and dirt, and I scraped a lot of the stuff off of it to try and explain to him what was going on. These pulleys get packed in with sand. He's not cleaning this thing. He's not taking care of it. He's got tons of stuff wrapped around the drive axles. And he doesn't know why the belt's coming off. And I told him on the last video, back in May, that there's supposed to be a plastic cover that goes around this whole area and covers up these pulleys to stop dust and shit from getting up on there, and it's missing. And trying to find something like that is very expensive. Could be as low as 50 bucks, could be as high as 150 bucks. Because it's not parts you can order. You know, it's parts where someone has one that blew up and then they want to sell the parts on eBay. So you can get into some expense. Now I'm going to look through my parts boxes and see if I have something that'll work. But in the meantime, his belt came off, and I tried to explain to him that because we have mostly sand, I mean, that's what Florida is, this is all sand. Basically, sand is kicking up in there, it's getting between the belt and the pulley, and I tried to show him, well, I did show him, that the inside of these pulleys were silver, because you basically have a belt and you have sand in between the belt and the pulley, which makes it a belt sander, and it will just shave everything down. And this belt is half the thickness it's supposed to be because it's been shaved down with sandpaper at 3,000 RPMs for the last several months. Not to mention the heat that builds up and rubber expands and shrinks and gets stretched out. So I don't even know if we'll be able to put this belt back on, if it will stay. But he just has 2 lawns he wants to cut today, so we're going to give it a shot. Now basically, the pulley has come off of the front drive pulley. So what I have to do is pull this thing back through where it belongs. Push it back up to the front where I can get to it. I have to feed it back around the pulleys under here so it stays where it's supposed to. Make sure nothing is twisted, and it is twisted. Feed that back where it's supposed to go, and then make sure that nothing is out of place. And basically we're going to just attempt to pull off that front cover once we have this thing untwisted and back where it belongs. And if it's twisted and you go to start this thing and it's connected to all the pulleys, if it's twisted, you'll get a few rotations and all of a sudden it'll try to untwist and it'll just snap the belt. So make sure before you even worry about getting it on all the pulleys that you pull this thing through, and I'll do that from the front, and make sure that I pull it all the way so that it's run around all the pulleys the way it's supposed to be. But what we're looking at today, now that we've got that fed back where it belongs, what we're gonna do, as soon as I see if you're in frame, what we're gonna do is pull this cover off. Yes, we're leaking gas out of the carb. It shouldn't be because we were tilted up the proper way. Oh no, we were tilted the wrong way. That's what happens when you tilt it carburetor side down. It won't hurt anything. It'll clear itself out. It's just some fuel. But anyway, we're going to pull off this front cover right here, and we're going to see why it came off the pulley. I'll bring you back as soon as I get that cover off. Now, I just want to note that on this particular machine, in order to take that top cover off, there's a bolt underneath. One here, and one right up here. You kind of got to get to it behind this gearbox. And the reason that we have fuel coming out is not because I had it tilted the wrong side. There's actually a vent on this tank, and this tank is so high that the gas is coming out the vent. It's not going to hurt anything. I'm going to dump it out and it will evaporate. Normally I would clamp off the fuel line, but I knew it wouldn't be up that long, and a little bit of extra gas in the carb won't hurt anything. It'll drain back out, and it's kind of like when you flood it, and then a few pulls and it'll clear itself. So now that we have those 3 bolts out, and they are 3/8 head, and they look like that, those 3 bolts come out, this whole case comes right off. Now you see what happens if you don't take this case off and clean your mower every once in a while. I mean, this is all just junk that's up here. And it will hold moisture, it will make your deck rust, it'll build up around your pulley, and when that dirt gets between your pulley and your belt, then it'll act as a thumper and it'll just let the belt spin itself right off. Now, there's how our belt goes back on. Let's see, when I pull the trigger, if we get enough movement that we can use the drive system. It looks like we will. So before I bother to put the cover back on, now that the belt's back in place, I'm going to move you over here. This is an all-wheel drive system. See if it'll stay on, if it'll work. All right, so let's just start it and make sure that the drive system is going to work before we put the covers back on. So it's going to get him through the day. Now, if you look at this belt, you can see that it's very loose. Let me try and get out of the sun. You can see that belt is very loose. It's not going to stay on there long, I promise you. It needs to be replaced. But for his purposes today, I told him it could last 5 minutes, could last 5 weeks. It won't, but he understands that he could get it out to the job here in another half hour when he picks it up, and get a quarter of the way through the lawn, 2 or 3 stripes, and the thing could pop off again, and there's nothing that can be done about that. That belt is worn out now due to all the sand and bullshit. So I'm just going to put the cover back on.